especially as you see right here, I've got fingerings that are present. I use fingerings when I transcribe. I know not everybody else does, but I include it because I want people to be able to really trust the tab as a reliable source of, like, you know, everything where it needs to be, so that you don't have to run off and like go watch a video just to get a ballpark estimate of what the song should feel like. You know, I want tabs to have enough information self-contained in them that that you don't have to use a video reference if you don't want to, and you can still come out pretty close to what the artist is doing. So that's my goal as a transcriber. And that, for me, one of the specific ways that I accomplish that is by including fingerings where they happen. So my rule of thumb is, like, let's say you've got verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. What I'll do is the first time you see the intro, I'll include the fingerings on that. And then if that riff pops up again, maybe as a tagline or a refrain, I'll just kind of leave it as is. And if there's an alteration somewhere in it as it repeats, then I'll include the fingering for that alteration. But there's a biblical... And then for the verse, like, I'll include the fingerings for the verse, and then include the fingerings for the chorus, and then include the fingerings for the bridge and the outro. If there's anything in there that's like a direct repeat of something else, I just won't include fingerings for that, because I'm operating by a biblical interpretation technique called the law of first mention, which is basically, if you're reading the Bible and, for instance, someone mentions a dove, and a dove is associated with the concept of peace, anytime after that you see a dove mentioned, it's usually also used as a literary tool to represent peace. So just kind of going off of that logic, this is just something I came up with because it just makes sense to me, and it feels akin to parallelism in grammar. It just feels like it's along those lines of reasoning. So no one told me to do this. It's just something that I do that I think makes tabs a little bit easier to understand. But also, from my perspective, I'm not cluttering up the page with way too many fingerings, and I'm not introducing fingerings to make the reader think like, oh, there's like new material, I have to learn it a different way now. Like, I feel like if I say the fingerings once, it should be the same unless I dictate otherwise. So that's relevant here because sometimes even after following that rule, like, that rule in part exists so that I'm not cluttering it up with too many fingerings. But having this as an option allows me to, like you see, I've got ghost notes, a hammer-on, upstroke, downstroke, lettering. I've got all of these little expression details right here and fingerings. And you really see it more when you export to PDF where there's crowding and stuff around the notes. But that really allows me to make sure there's no crowding so that there's nothing hiding behind each other. So I'm really excited about that in particular.